everybody, welcome back to the Ask the Advisor series. I'm Josh Bradley with Capital City Financial. We've been hitting a lot about annuities, pros and cons, different types of annuities. And today's segment is basically what is a fixed annuity. So annuities in general provide a lot of benefits, but can come with a lot of drawbacks. We hit a lot more in detail in our previous videos, so I won't hit too much on that with this one. But in general, tax deferral, contribution limits, and then maybe additional benefits like long-term care protection, income, death benefit, maybe something that an annuity can provide. So can provide good benefits. Cons, negatives are usually high fees, high costs, and or lockup, meaning you can't access your money without a penalty until after a certain period. So those are still things you got to keep in mind when evaluating fixed annuities. However, I want to hit on the differences between fixed and maybe some of the other annuities. So as I also said before, is generally 80% of annuities are generally bad for 80% of people, and most are just not worth considering, in my opinion. However, as I said before, there are some that sometimes could fill a role based on your specific situation. And with that comment, those few that do make some sense sometimes are generally in the fixed annuity category. And so main thing around that and the difference between a fixed and variable is a fixed is principally protected and will provide a fixed benefit to you, whereas a variable can go up and down, hence the word variable. So that is one additional benefit that usually fixed annuities do provide for people, is some form of guaranteed protection or principal protection of their assets. So this is especially helpful for those that are getting later into retirement or going into retirement and wanting these steady and predictable values with their contract and want principal protection. So principal protection is a big thing there. So as we dig into different fixed annuities, there's kind of three main ones that I kind of look at. The first is just guaranteed income. So this is more of your traditional annuity where I can turn $100,000 or $50 or $1 million over to an insurance company, and they will guarantee me a paycheck for a predetermined set of time. That might be 10 years, it might be 20. For a lot of folks, that might be a lifetime income. So you know exactly how much you're going to receive monthly from here until the day you die. And that's a great thing, and it can help with a lot of planning to know exactly how much you're going to get per month, and it's not going to run out. So that's kind of a guaranteed income annuity. The second is kind of a fixed interest rate annuity. So these annuities traditionally aren't designed to pay you a guaranteed income for life. They're just designed to, number one, protect your principal, and number two, provide a predetermined guaranteed rate of return. So many of these are just a set interest rate. So you might go out and buy a 3-year fixed annuity that's going to pay you, let's say, 5.5%, hypothetically. So what that means is that annuity carrier is going to lock your money up for 3 years. They may allow you to access maybe some of the interest before the 3 years, but it's a 3-year maturity. What they're going to do in return for that 3-year lockup is they're going to pay you 5.5% set for 3 years. So you know exactly what you're going to make and for how long. That's very similar to a bond or really any other fixed interest rate investment, predetermined principal protection as well as interest. One of the negatives I talk about annuities are two big ones. Number one are fees. Number two are lockups. With a fixed rate annuity, the fee is traditionally built into your interest rate. So when I gave you that 3-year at 5.5% interest, the fee is already built into the interest rate. So you could have maybe made 6.5%, but they're paying you 5.5% after all their fees. So you can easily determine whether that's a good investment or not because, like I said, the fees are built in to the interest rate. The second is long-term. 3 years can be long-term for some. It may be perfect for others, but at least you know exactly when and how you can access your money. So fixed rate annuities can be an amazing tool as maybe a bond alternative for a lot of folks to get a good rate of return for a set period of time. And these can range from 1 year, 10 to 15 years of maturity based on your needs or objectives. The third type of annuity, fixed annuity that we see in general, is an index annuity. So Fixed index annuities are somewhat popular. A lot of people talk about them, good and bad. But what they effectively do is they provide you a principal protection like the other fixed annuities. So traditionally, you cannot lose your money. But instead of paying you a fixed interest rate like 5.5 or 6, like I talked about before, they pay you an annual interest rate based on a specific index, hence the word fixed indexed annuity. Fixed implies it's principally protected. Index implies that they're paying you an interest rate on how an index performs. There can be hundreds of different indexes that these things are based on, and it can get really complicated of how to follow those indexes. However, in general, most of these are based or have an option to be based on the S&P 500, which is the largest index, the most used index out there. So it's easily something you can pull up and check on any time of the year. So an index annuity may say, hey, we're going to pay you an interest on how the S&P 500 does, up to usually a cap or participation rate. So a cap just means that they will pay you what the S&P 500 does up to a capped rate. So one carrier might say, hey, we'll cap it at 10%. So what that means is if the S&P 500 goes up 8% this year, you would make 8% interest. If the S&P went up 15% this year, you would be capped at 10%. So 10% is pretty good, 15 is better. However, if the S&P was down 10 or 20 or 30% this year, because it's a fixed annuity, you would make traditionally zero. So it can give you some high upside interest potential and without the fear of losing those funds. And that can be really good in a choppy market where maybe 1 year it's up, 1 year it's down, the next year it's up. You would make interest 2 out of 3 of those years. So it can be very powerful. If you look at it long term, these things can perform very well. One of the biggest negatives that we see with fixed index annuities and things to look out for is number one, the differences between one carrier and another is big. So one carrier might say, hey, we'll give you 10% on that. Another may be 5. So when evaluating these annuities, you want to make sure that the indexes are clear, have a long track record, and not just recently created. And then also compare those upside index options with each so that you're getting the best deal possible. The other big negative we see with these contracts is that a lot of people, quote unquote, sell them as some market alternative, like, hey, you can make the upside of the market with no risk. It is true that these investments are traditionally principally protected. However, to assume that you're going to make the full return of the market really isn't the case. So indexed annuities, just like any other fixed annuity, is traditionally compared to, let's say, your safer investments like a long-term bond, and is not designed to be an equity alternative. With that being said, there's complexities in there. One carrier versus another can be great, so you want to be extra cautious when evaluating index annuities. Not to say they can't be a good place for it, but you want to make sure you're evaluating multiple carriers to make sure it's the best opportunity for you.